Now that you have packed away the Christmas ornaments and Chrismons for the season, it's time for some contemplation. Those Chrismons are from the 80s. They're made of styrofoam. The glitter has dropped off and they're being held together with toothpicks. Don't celebrate another Christmas harkening back to the age of glitter balls. See Ad Crusim's beautifully designed Christmons, together with our book describing how they fit into the church year. Visit adcrusim.com. That's ADCRUCEM.com.
You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin. I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
Today we have a book club wrap up, and these are always super fun. This might be my favorite one so far. Maybe I say that every time. But However, this was Jane Austen, Persuasion. And if you haven't read Jane Austen, Persuasion, you should probably pause this podcast and go spend the day reading the book and then come back. Maybe not. I think it'd be worth it. I don't know how we've made it this long without doing Jane Austen, but I'm very glad we finally did because this was a super fun read. I devoured this book in one day and it was a most glorious Saturday of my life. So
Did you
Rachel,
drink some tea?
Oh,
while reading it.
Coffee.
Metaphorical
Far
tea.
too much.
Okay. Coffee. Okay. Your tea equivalent.
It is my tea equivalent.
That's fine. That's okay.
Yes. It was a glorious
There are
day.
worse things to consume while you're reading.
It's true. Rachel, take it away.
Yeah, so Persuasion it is the first time we've done a Jane Austen book. We always knew it was going to happen at some point. And now it did in the middle of a rather, I suppose the nice way to put it is cozy winter. The middle of a cozy winter, which is a great time to read a good novel. Jane Austen's Persuasion, this was her last completed novel, shows her at her most mature in terms of her writing style. She'd finally worked out how to have an incredibly satisfying ending. And this one, I think, regardless of where you rank Persuasion elsewise in your Jane Austen list, it certainly has, for my money, the most satisfying ending of any of her books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it was actually published shortly after her death. And she had some other, projects in the hopper when she died, but this is the one that she, saw through to the end. It follows the story of Anne Elliot, the second daughter of a very vain and conceited and spendthrift baron. And she had her one romance in her late teens was with a Navy captain who was just at the beginning of his career, was not at that point rich enough or elegant enough to please her family or friends. And she ended up giving him up. And so the book starts a number of years later. She's about 27 and is now encountering Captain Wentworth for the first time, realizing she really regrets having sent him away and is kind of hoping she has a second chance. But it's also got all the classic Jane Austen things where, she basically sat in the back corners of drawing rooms and ballrooms, of English upper class, and then gets her own back writing about these people in the most hilarious, ridiculous, roasty way possible. And so it's part romance, part social satire, and part just straight up comedy. And it was a great read for me. This is probably the third or fourth time I've read it. And every time I read it, it gets further up in my list of Jane Austen favorites, which is, of course, also my list of all-time favorites because Jane Austen is quite possibly top 3 or 4 favorite novelists for me. And yeah, it was, and not just because since the first time I read it, I'm now married to a naval officer.
I didn't think of that at all as I was reading this.
Oh, I thought of it many times. Well, there's a lot about the Navy, the British Navy in this book and their lifestyle and the character qualities of the naval officers, who I must say, Captain Wentworth is far superior to a Wickham or army officers, which show up in certain other of Jane Austen's books.
I was impressed. It's like Jane Austen determined, haha, at this point, everyone knows that the villain will be the W man. And she's like, haha, I will surprise them all. It is not.
That's right. Because she had a Wickham and she had a Willoughby.
Yeah, Willoughby.
And now she's got a Wentworth. But dun, he's not the villain.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's brilliant. So what did you all think? Obviously, Sarah, you loved it. Good for you. I approve.
Persuasion is the first Jane Austen book I've ever read.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Welcome, welcome, friend.
I don't want to be here. I think I know why I've avoided it for 35 years.
Oh, no.
Maybe I'm just projecting, because I don't want to get too psychological here. Maybe it's not projection. I just feel like it's stories like this that spoil what it means to be a woman.
Oh.
Okay, you're going to have to go deeper there. You can't just leave that hanging.
Like, yes, there's angst in this story, and as it's the most mature, as you say, of the writing, I'm assuming that means it's probably the most like realistic angst that there can be. But like, I don't know. That's just not how that's just not how relationships are anymore. I don't think, or maybe they are, and they're. I don't know. I don't know. Like unrequited love. It's like just everyone thinks bills it as this most romantic thing, and no, it's just stupid. Like just communicate with each other. Like just be forthright. What I want to do, honestly, is like send them all to a therapist. And I think I've said that with every book we've read.
But then there would be no drama.
That's the thing, is like really, like you really need to create this environment. Like just talk it out, homie.
But isn't that one of the themes in this case?
Yeah.
Like she was exploring the fact that, because there was no actual honest communication, here are the consequences that they had to deal with.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a quick and easy fix.
Yeah.
It was years long, almost a decade long of unhappiness on both people's parts.
And maybe I just it was really dumb that Anne got persuaded out of being with Frederick at the first. Like, I just feel like
I actually disagree with that. I think it was right for her to be persuaded against him at first. I think Lady Russell was
you
correct.
Think she was right. Well, and so much of this, I mean, thinking about when it was set and what English, and this is the social satire part of all of this, thinking of British society at the time, there's a lot of things that we would do now of like just having these conversations and not letting ourselves being persuaded as women, that was what life was like in English society at that point. You had to marry well. Like you were expected to marry well. And if you didn't, you would be like not invited to any society stuff, and then you would have no life. So like so much of this is set in that realm of what it meant to live in society and how, silly some of that things especially look to us now because we think it's dumb.
And yet at the same time, if one of my daughters came to me at 19 and said, I'm going to marry this guy, you don't know his family, he doesn't have a great job, he's hardworking, I know he's going to make good at some point.
Exactly.
I would have said, let's just like back that truck up a couple of meters here. And I think that's a difference reading it as a mother of teenagers now, as opposed to when I first read it as a teenager, that I look at that as a teenager. I thought, it wasn't fair. How could she have, talked her friend, her young friend out of, Lady Russell talks her out of marrying Captain Wentworth at a time when he is basically an unemployed nobody. And Anne sees all these qualities in him, but neither of them knows if he's really going to actually follow through on any of this. And I used to see the injustice, and now I'm with Erin. I'm having second thoughts. Yeah. I'm like, and maybe if they'd gotten married, things would have gone differently for him. He wouldn't have been able to see the success that he did. He would not have had that chance to go out, and the impetus to basically earn his place in her world. Not that he could earn her love, but that he would earn a place next to her. I think that was a great motivator for him. They were miserable for a while, and that really stunk. But
so can we talk about who she really should have ended up with in this story?
Whoa! Let us hear.
What? I don't remember his name, but it's the dude who lives in Lyme.
Benwick?
Is it Benwick?
Benwick.
Benwick.
Captain Benwick.
He said it weird on the audiobook.
Oh, they would have probably said Benwick.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really shipped them for a second. I'm not going to lie to you. When they were there visiting.
Yeah, I kind of thought that they would end up together.
I really wanted them to be together at the end because he was a good dude and he was maybe one of the most honorable dudes in that story.
Well, he ended up with someone that he loved very much. And I think he was a little immature for her. She would have gotten tired waiting for him to grow up to the point where they could have an adult conversation and not just talk about his, gushy poetry all the time.
Yeah. I think he married Louisa, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
He's another piece of work.
They're wonderful together, though, because she needed someone to care for her after her accident. And he is like the perfect person to do that.
If she wasn't being so childish, she wouldn't have had the accident. Can I just say
she
that?
did.
Look. Okay, there's probably like 5 or 6 different instances in this book where if like time travel through like canonical fiction universes was possible, I would spend all 6 of those credits going back to Persuasion and inserting myself in the narrative with a bullhorn. Well, saying either, wow, you're stupid, or like, this is awkward, like stuff like that. Like, I just, I don't know, guys. It wasn't.
You need to read more Jane Austen.
I guess I do, maybe. I don't know.
Some of this just made more sense because, I read Pride and Prejudice a really, really, really long time ago. So I had a very long break in the middle of my reading of her. But I have recently watched Love and Friendship and Emma. And so many of these scenes reading the book were like playing out in my head with those characters and voices. And it just, I don't know. Just so funny.
I don't think you never said, I don't think we did around the table. You've read Jane Austen before, right? You've probably read this book.
I have read this book before. And similar to Rachel, I also read it differently this time around. This was either the second or third time I read it. I think this was the second time I read it. And definitely different things resonated with me this time. But again, Bree, on your thing with Louisa, you're right. But I think that was intentional on the author's part. Like, she was showing that this girl was foolish. She learned a harsh lesson.
Yeah.
And she had a harsh consequence. And then she, learned and grew and...
Well, and Louisa's personality, it really, I think the accident was a definite wake-up call for dear Frederick Wentworth, because he had been, one obstacle to him and Anne getting back together was his feeling like, man, I think I really need a woman who's just a little bit more decisive, knows her own mind, assertive. That Anne is such a total pushover. I don't think that really fits with me. And so then he was sort of flirting a lot with Louisa, who's this total impetuous, assertive, impulsive child who definitely follows her own mind, even if she hasn't thought things through all the way. And so when she has this accident that is absolutely the result of being a leap before you look kind of thing, which is what Frederick thought he wanted in a woman, then he sees, oh, no, actually, I think I want something more in the middle. Someone who knows her own mind, but that actually has, some sense and prudence in that mind, who has both the conviction to act on her beliefs, but has actually put some thought into them. And so it really helped clear the way for him coming to a new and deeper appreciation of Anne, which is really good if they were going to get married and live happily ever after together. Him being able to respect her unreservedly was probably the result of his flirtation with Louisa and the consequences thereof. So it all worked out. I think.
Oh,
I love that. And this sounds super morbid, but like the whole series of events immediately after that accident were like this huge turning point.
yeah.
Because like everyone's like, Anne is competent. There's no one more competent than Anne. And I was like, yes, you go, girl.
She's getting some appreciation.
Yes.
Poor Anne.
Someone paralyzing themselves, but yes.
While we're talking about Anne and her appreciation or lack thereof, we should take some time to address a little question that was raised to us on the Facebook book club discussion.
Yeah.
Elisa Francisco had asked, she said, I was wondering about birth order and marriage customs, perplexed as to why the oldest unmarried daughter was held in such esteem, and Anne was looked down on for not yet being married, yet she was younger. So a little segue here, and we're just going to talk about rank in English upper class society. It is a little strange that Elizabeth Elliot in her 30s is still regarded with such esteem. But the truth is, the eldest daughter always was, especially if her mother had died. And so Elizabeth was really the lady of the house from the time she was about 16 years old. One of the sort of jokes and bits of tension in the book is that neither Elizabeth nor her father, because they spent so much time looking pretty all the time, has noticed that Elizabeth really has let herself get a little older than she should have if she wants to actually get married. So what we see happening in the book is that she thinks she has all the time in the world. Doesn't that sound familiar? We see a lot of young people today who sort of think, oh, I have all the time in the world. Let me fritter away my 20s. And, you know, then I'll certainly be able to find somebody and settle down and have those 10 kids, you know, when I'm ready. And I think the lesson with Elizabeth is you can't wait forever. You can't have such terrifically ridiculous standards. I won't call her standards high. They aren't high, but they're specific. So she is about to see her place in society sort of evolve from lady of the house to eventually, once her father dies, she's going to lose pretty much all her status. And that's something that's coming that she's unable to see. But we see the ranking of status in women. It's partly based on the family that they're born into. They're a baronet's daughters. They're always going to be respected. Not as much as the Dalrymple ladies, but you know, so they know their place. They like their place. And then the rank goes from the eldest, Miss Elliot, to her sister, Miss Anne Elliot, to her younger sister, Miss Mary Elliot. However, when Mary married, she bumped up in rank. So Anne really is the lowest. There's a wonderful scene in Pride and Prejudice where 15-year-old Lydia Bennet has just eloped scandalously, gotten married, shows up at home, and they're walking into the house. And the mother and father goes first, and then they file in very specific protocols here, you know, in order of rank. And she says to Jane, her older sister, no, I take your place now, Jane, because I'm a married woman. And so, there's a lot of this rank tension throughout the book.
In Mary, her evaluating the Musgrove sisters' choices of husband, and she was like, that one's just ridiculous. And she's like, but that's okay, because that means she'll never surpass me once my husband finally ascends to his place.
Right. Well,
then I will far outweigh them.
But that was a super important thing, that status for them.
I think one of the greatest injustices of this book is Mary Musgrove being a terrible mom. And like Anne Elliot basically being a better mom to Mary's children than Mary is.
Yep.
I just
I
had to laugh. She was a terrible mom.
But it shows Anne's character, though, that she cared so much about her sister's kids that she was like, I'm going to be awesome to these kids.
So this came up in the
even though they're little brats.
Even though they're little brats,
How the heck did Anne turn out that way? She was surrounded by all these
horrible
people. How did
her mother?
How did she turn out this way when everyone else in her immediate circle, except for Lady Russell, essentially, and we assume her mother.
Yeah.
But is that all it was?
And then was the second born, and the second borns are the best.
I mean, little kids, dude.
Don't at
mature
me.
differently. Well, I mean, Lady Russell, as much as we maybe villainify her for her
Villainizing?
persuasion.
Vilify.
Thank you. She did have a heart for looking out for the best of people. So I think if Anne was separating herself from her sisters and her dad because of their character, and she got the genetic pool of the other side of the family of her mom and just did not want to be like them, then the pendulum swings the opposite direction and she ends up as this completely opposite person.
And she's 27 at this point. Like, think about all of the, and it's not like she was obviously the favorite, like, ever.
Right.
And so
middle child.
You're right. At some point when you're nearing 30 and you've sort of been in this environment where you're invisible, like, it's entirely possible that you're going to adopt the values and virtues of people that are most unlike the family that you have, that don't see you or validate you as an individual.
Well, and she also had Mrs. Smith, her governess, too, right? And
that was her best friend, her best school friend.
Yeah.
But she was obviously a really good influence on her character as well, because she ends up being also a very great person.
So she had a good mother. She had a good mentor who, despite the persuasion, which may or may not have been appropriate, was constantly exposing her to a more thoughtful way of living. She had the middle child thing where she wasn't, she wasn't as pretty as her older sister.
Yeah, right.
So she's not ugly. She's beautiful, but not as beautiful. And so she doesn't catch her dad's eye as meeting his standards for perfect physical perfection. So you could say she's neglected, or you could say she's spared a lot of that unhelpful stuff. She's got, just like the Bible says, that persecution develops all these virtues in you, She's got that. But then on top of that, as you see in her conversations with Captain Benwick, she has done a lot of reading in her life, and not just fluffy stuff either, like good stuff. She's read stuff that has made her mind and her soul deeper than they would otherwise have been. And so you've got all these sort of things working together to create a woman who at 27 is quite honestly someone I want to be when I grow up. Let's just say that.
Right. Word up.
And yet she's not too perfect, because she's still, and one of the things that's so frustrating about this novel is that you're right, Brie, there's a lot of angst. She overthinks everything. And you find out at the end that she has misread half the situation she's been in from the beginning. If she could have just picked up on Captain Wentworth's cues a little bit sooner on, they'd have settled this way earlier. But she just assumes he must hate me forever. And sigh, angst. So she's
faint on the fainter.
She's not perfect. She gets things wrong. And that, I think, makes her all the more lovable.
She's super relatable to me. I was, the whole overthinking every situation, #anxiety spice. I mean, it's just so related. But I think that's part of the reason I love her character so much, is that she's just this introvert who loves her alone time and knows she needs her alone time, and goes and disappears and overthinks everything, but is also just a very calm and wise person. And I'm yes, Anne, you are.
I would be
interested kind of heroine
to see, because as you're talking, Sarah, I'm thinking back to, was there, I think there was, because of her nature, obviously, I think there was more self-talk in the book and thoughts than actual words. So now I'm possibly percentage wise, I would be interested if someone went and did the math on this. The percentage of words spoken out loud by Anne Elliot in that entire book.
I noticed
how
that
many
too.
words did she actually say?
I actually did notice. I picked up on that near the end of the book, that Anne doesn't actually.
She doesn't talk a lot.
No.
Yeah.
We're just inside her head the whole time.
Yes.
And people talk about her. Sometimes in her hearing, that scene at the beginning where she's playing the piano for all the young people who are dancing, and Captain Wentworth asks, "Doesn't Anne dance?" "Oh no, she never dances. She is retired from dancing and prefers just to play for us. What a sweet girl!" It's and Anne's got to be thinking, "I'm right here, you guys."
So there were a couple of times, I think there was one interaction between her and Mary that Mary just kept going and going and going. And then there was another interaction, I think, with Anne and I think it was Henrietta after Louisa's accident. They were talking, and like Henrietta probably it was like a pages long run-on sentence, and like that's one of the times I want to travel back in time to Persuasion with my bullhorn and be like, shut up! Stop talking! Enough!
I think, though, that it is a good reminder to us. We live in a very noisy, outspoken age, that sometimes the most powerful and respected people are those who do more listening than talking.
Right.
Yeah.
And
or
that's
like inner thinking.
That's a good lesson for me, because I like to talk. And yet I find that when I intentionally talk less, the things I have to say are better somehow. And that's definitely true in Anne's world. It also allows us, just as speaking about the craft of the writer right here, by giving Anne so few lines, it allows us to see the world through her eyes, and also better to step into her shoes and imagine we are her. Because we're not, the script isn't there, it's just us. And oftentimes when Anne is speaking, Austen doesn't actually write out her words, just says, Anne replied such and so to the positive or whatever. You know, a lot of her statements are in summary. And I think that allows you to relate to the character even more, because you can imagine you are her. It's not all scripted out for you. You'd fill in the gaps.
That's a good point.
I want to talk about the letter, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Well, what else do we need to talk about before we get to the letter?
I know you guys wanted to talk about Lady Russell. Do you want to talk about her?
Yeah, let's talk about Lady Russell a little bit more, because she is, to a certain extent, she is us. She is the one you look at and you're like, boy, if there was ever a church lady in a Jane Austen novel, it's Lady Russell.
Lady Russell.
She's got so much love for the girls in her life. She's a total mentor. You know, if she lived today, she'd be the youth group leader. She is smart. She is sensible. She has good breeding. She behaves well. Like, she's one of the few people in the book who actually knows how to behave well. But she also has a lot of prejudices and biases, and has a little tendency towards micromanagement that I'm sure will sound familiar to at least one of the people on this thread. I'm talking about me. And so we went back and forth on this a little bit on the thread, and the answers were so great, by the way. Even though the event is now technically over and done, if you ever want to see what Lutheran Ladies Book Club is about, this is the one to jump in on. Go to the events page, find past events in our Facebook group, and then just click through all the threads. And my goodness, the people who participated this time brought the smarts and the deep thinks and all of that, and said everything so beautifully. But we talked about whether Lady Russell is more of a hero or a villain, sort of the wise mentor or the snobby, small-minded saboteur. So if we're thinking about ourselves as church ladies in the type of a Lady Russell, do we want to be like her, or try not to be like her, or somewhere in the middle, like some of each? What do you think?
I mean, I think the classic, I'd want to be like her good qualities and not like her bad qualities. Because we know we all have both.
Right.
And again, that is, I appreciate that. Jane Austen doesn't typically make anyone perfect. She is willing to often make someone completely bad, but she doesn't allow people to be, allow her people to be perfect. They get foibles and weaknesses, and we get to see that and see the effects of it. And Lady Russell is not immune to that, which must be because Jane Austen liked her. That's my theory. People she liked, she made them more dimensional.
So as frustrating as this book made me with people's stupid decisions, like in real life, especially with people I love, like I try not to be a Lady Russell by being too persuasive or too suggestive or too prescriptive. But what I do try to be is like, if somebody I know makes a choice that even from the get-go, I'm like, that's not going to end well. Like, my goal in that person's life is to be there for them after that bad choice sort of comes to fruition. And I think there are obvious exceptions to that, obvious extremes where I would act differently. But yeah, I try not to be that meddlesome person in people's lives telling them not to marry this person or buy that thing. Or
what if it was one of your nieces?
Extremes are exceptions. Extremes.
So one of Bree's nieces, whose names I won't mention here for their privacy's sake, comes up to her at like 19 and is like, Auntie Bree, I love him so much. And she's like, well, what does he got going for him?
All goes to pot.
This will not end well. You will not be together forever. But
is he a church guy? Well, no, not really.
Don't do it.
Is he going to college? Doesn't really think college is important. Do you know his family? It's just like you can translate this into today's terms and be like, okay, if one of my daughters came and had this person who, might be a really wonderful person and time would tell that, but at the moment, I don't see anything.
Right.
I wouldn't say no. I would say wait a while. I don't know that I would have done anything differently, but
yeah, I don't know. I was very torn on her character as I was reading, and I really didn't like her. But on more reflection of my own biases reading the book and some of the comments, which you're right, are like gold, and thinking through my own relationships with women who are younger than me in my church who talk to me about stuff, I think it's not bad to have, I don't know, persuasion sounds like such a you will do what I tell you kind of word. But having that influence, godly influence with younger women in our lives isn't a bad thing. When we've been through situations that maybe younger women haven't been through yet, and we have some wisdom, especially as we get to be like church lady, we get to be
women leaders of the church.
Women leaders of the church. When we have the wisdom and experience, there's nothing wrong with sharing that with other women. But also taking into consideration our wisdom may not be perfect, probably will not be perfect because we're sinful. Other people's life situations are different and they don't have to do things the same way that we do them or that we want to do them, but offering advice and wisdom in a way that guides them on a godly path and keeps them true in their faith and in the church. I think that is a very good thing and a good lesson to learn from Lady Russell. Just like not imposing our own will on everybody.
And also the whole understanding our own limitations, our prejudices and biases. Lady Russell definitely is classist. Let's just say that she, like Lady Catherine de Bourgh in Pride and Prejudice, likes to see the distinction of rank preserved. And even if Frederick Wentworth had been just a man of tons of energy and potential and hardworking and good moral character and deep thinker and all of that, she still might not have thought him good enough for Anne Elliot because Anne Elliot is a baron's daughter and Frederick Wentworth never will be. And so to that extent, I think we as Lady Russell types need to examine ourselves and say, is this wisdom that I'm giving out here, is that really based in godly scriptural wisdom, or is it me bringing my own preconceived notions to this conversation?
Yes.
We should also talk a little bit about the big themes in this book. Obviously, the characters are interesting, if not always likable. The heroine is amazing. But there's also a lot going on beyond a simple love story. This is not just a quote-unquote romance novel. There's just a lot happening. So what do you think are the big themes?
Persuasion.
The number of times that word was in this book, though, I was like, LOL, I see what you did there, Jane Austen.
The notes. Okay, so the book that I read, the version of it that I read, had this whole section of notes at the end. And I'm really glad I didn't know that they had them. And I actually started reading it, just ignoring the notes, because I was like, who needs notes? But then I went back and started reading through all of them. And it was really cool. There was a note that kind of explained how her use of the word persuasion actually shifts throughout the book.
Oh, interesting.
And it was really fascinating.
Well, while you're looking for that, I will just jump in here and say, I think one of the maybe it's a theme, I don't know, not really having to do with the whole romance aspect of it, is that status doesn't mean a whole lot for you as a person if you're morally bankrupt. So like her dad, I don't remember all their names. Their father,
Sir Walter, he's a piece of work.
He is a piece of work. Like I'm kind of glad that he was morally and ultimately physically bankrupt and had to like leave his little grounds or whatever. Like I mean, just not like just being so caught up in appearances and just snobby and caught up in status and everything.
When the admiral was talking about how he's like, I had to remove quite a few looking glasses. He's like, I still have one large one and one small one, and that's enough. Nobody had their bag.
How self-absorbed can you be?
Ugh. But he's like the stereotype of
he really is
of top British class. Like this is the only thing that matters.
Total dandy and way too old to be doing all this.
Yes.
Yeah, no spring chicken himself, honestly.
Yeah.
But the way he judges other people based exclusively on their physical appearance and social status is, but it's meant to be a cautionary note because Jane Austen obviously knew people who, not to this extreme, but who did definitely say physical appearance and social status are the things that matter. Maybe wealth as well. And so in Sir Walter, she just turned up the volume to 11 so that everyone could see how stupid that is.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder what Lady Elliot was like before she died.
Yeah.
And what Sir Walter was like while he had a sensible woman to love him.
Right.
Seems like when she died, he sort of went off the rails into all the worst parts of his character. And I think is an argument for marrying sensible women, I guess.
That's a good argument.
Yeah.
Okay, so the note in the book just says, the first time it comes up in chapter 2, says entirely convinced. It's the first of many diverse uses of the concept of persuasion in this book. See introduction. So there's this whole explanation of like the way that she uses persuasion kind of shifts through the book, which is interesting. And I can't read you the whole introduction, but find a book with notes, guys. This was really great.
Notes are great.
Yes.
I mean, find a book with notes and in doing so, support an English major who no doubt painstakingly wrote the notes and needs to eat.
Oh, yeah. This was edited by Gillian Beer. So thanks. Thanks, Gillian Beer. That was
support her Patreon.
This was great. But that also explained like the whole book that he's looking through at the beginning. That's how it actually made me start reading the notes because I had no idea what was happening. And then the notes explained like what this whole book was and why he was so enthralled by all of these his own names and lineage and like super vain.
I think another theme that I saw coming up, and we've talked a little bit about Mary Musgrove's terrible parenting, but is the contrast in parenting styles. Obviously, Sir Walter, terrible parent. Mary, terrible parent. But then you've got these, the senior Musgroves. They're much better parents. They have a lot of kids. And they sort of equal parts indulge them and love on them, but also provide some structure in their life. And then you see the Harvilles, who are perhaps even better, who have, even though I got to say, I think like half the book, the Harville kids are actually staying with the Musgroves. So think what you will about their parenting, but those are represented as good parents because they love their children. They want what's best for them. And they themselves are good people. That this is what makes a good parent. Be a good person yourself, love your kids, and provide a little structure. That's all. And Sir Walter doesn't do any of these things. He's not a good person. He doesn't really love his kids. And there is no structure aside from the social status hierarchy that he builds his whole life around. Mary Musgrove, same thing. Not a good person, doesn't really like her kids,
she
and
even
no
says
structure.
It, bro. Like she doesn't even sugarcoat it.
Yeah. So if you're feeling like you're a terrible parent, just ask yourself, do I try to be a good person? Do I love my kids? And is there structure in our lives?
Yeah.
And then relax a little bit. You're probably a Mrs. Musgrove, not a Mary Musgrove.
Yeah. I think there was also a theme on, and this is very much of the time, but on the idea of your what is it? Noblesse oblige. I think that might be how you say it. Like they usually, it's like a French term, I believe. Anyway, it's like the obligation that the nobility had towards those who were dependent on them.
Yes.
And Anne was so disappointed in her father once he had actually had to relocate, and that when she arrived, he had no interest in how the people were doing, that he was not able to support anymore. He didn't ask about, how the people in the village, he was only concerned, did they ask about him? Were they concerned that he was, no longer there? Were they sad about that? And then you also saw it in the relationship to an extent. Like it started playing out, I think, a little bit in the relationship between Anne and her dear friend, Mrs. Smith, who had fallen on such hard times. And Anne did not turn her back on her, but continued to, go to her. And afterwards, in the sort of epilogue, you learn that, she was able to try and do what she could to help reverse her circumstances through her husband. And I feel like it's a minor theme, but it did show up there, and it shows up, I think, elsewhere in Austen's writing. I think this is one of the things that she wrestled with, like, because classism is there, but there's also like this obligation that goes with it, with great power, great responsibility.
You see Anne in the early part of the book when they're saying goodbye to their ancestral home. She makes a point of going around and visiting all the people in the parish and, giving gifts to the poorer among them.
Right.
That there was, as you say, noblesse oblige, that the rich ladies especially were charged with, if you are a good person, you will share what you have with the poorest of your neighbors, that you will take them by baskets of food and medicine and supplies and things. There's a wonderful line in Emma who tries to do this thing, but doesn't quite get it. She does it because it's supposed to be done, not because she has deep compassion. But she's talking about a family of sort of prosperous farmers, but they aren't on her level. And she says, if they were a little bit lower, I might be able to do something for them. If they were a little bit higher, they might be able to like come to one of my parties. But where they are right now, there's just like no reason for me to ever talk to them at all. And I just, you want to throttle Emma and go, that's not the point. But you're right that in this book, too, it's one of the things we see Anne doing that establishes her character. Anne and Lady Russell both take part in this sort of informal social welfare system where they make sure that the poorest among their neighbors and tenants, get some of what they have. And Sir Walter and Elizabeth don't even care, don't even notice. They're just spending on themselves. And you see that contrast.
Yeah.
I keep bringing up Mrs. Smith, but I love their relationship. I love that relationship. And I think the part that really struck me was when Anne was invited over to that party with what, Lady Dalrymple?
Yes.
Is that who it was? And she's like, sorry, I'm not going to the party. I have a previous engagement with my friend who is a nobody to you guys. And I'm going to keep that engagement rather than being in society with y'all. And her family is like, are you nuts?
Yep.
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Yep.
And she's like, well, she's my friend and I have this engagement with her and I'm not going to break that. And I love that relationship. And I don't know, regardless of Anne's motives, whether it was this obligation to her or her just not wanting to be around all of that.
Yeah, there's another instance later in the book where she totally does break an engagement with Mrs. Smith and Mrs. Smith understands and it's all good. But yes, you're right. The fact that she actually places her nobody friends' claims on her equivalent to her extremely posh, though very dull cousins, our cousins, the Dalrymples. That is sort of Jane taking a dig at the society and its values. Yeah.
And I think the importance of keeping true relationships. I mean, this shows up elsewhere with when they all go to Lyme and they catch up with these friends and it's like no time has passed. Like these friends get together and there's genuine love and friendship between all of these people.
And then camaraderie.
Yeah.
Nick and Harville and Wentworth are all like, dude, my dude.
But I love that. I think, speaking to the, and maybe this is just in my head because it's come up in Bible study so much frequently at my church. But just the value of cultivating friendships and putting the effort in to keep those relationships alive is very important, especially as we, mature and it's just harder to make friends.
And they do take work. They
Yes.
absolutely do. Work, time, effort, all of it. Relationships require investment and choosing to invest in her old friend who needed her and had a lot to offer and saved her skin. Oh my goodness.
Right?
Yes. I did not like Mr. Elliot at all.
Such a jerk face.
I didn't.
He was a sleazebag the whole time, but I didn't think he was that bad.
Until the end.
Until she started like dishing out on him. And then I was
He's
not
just,
happy.
I mean, there's not
sleazy,
that much,
but
there's not that much difference between him and Sir Walter, actually. And that they both looking out for number one first. They have different ideas about what that looks like, but they're absolutely motivated in the same way.
Ugh,
yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
Do you want to talk about the letter now?
Okay, so I definitely legitimately screamed when that letter came up.
That's funny. My eyes rolled in the back of my head.
It's so Jane Austen. Just
exactly.
Do this through a letter. But the whole way that it happened, I really have nothing constructive to say. I just loved it.
I might have gone back and reread it a couple of times myself.
Yes. But I've felt this tension when she was talking so loudly with, who was she talking with?
Harville, I think.
Harville, yeah. She was talking very, very specifically, she was talking to him, but she was really talking to Wentworth so that he would overhear her. And he's just furiously writing. And then he comes back and gives it to her. And I died.
Oh, my eyeballs fell out.
It was so great.
But if you compare that, when I say she got the ending finally, at least you see the words with which he professes his love.
Yes!
As opposed to a Pride and Prejudice where, Mr. Darcy makes his profession, my feelings and sentiments on the matter remain unchanged.
Yeah.
That's not exactly the most romantic. And then you don't even hear Elizabeth Bennet's response. She just assured him that her feelings had changed. That's not satisfying. I mean, it is.
No.
It's incredibly satisfying, but not like Frederick Wentworth's letter.
You pierced my soul.
Ugh.
Are we just a bunch of teeny bopper schoolgirls? Because I think maybe we are.
Yes. Here's my soul. Shut up.
I think I would have melted had I actually gotten a letter like this in real life, though. It would just, I don't know. I probably couldn't handle it, but I love it in the book.
If you got a letter like that in real life, you probably would roll your eyes and be like, ah. But in this context,
probably.
it's right.
It's so good. But it's it's so within their characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I was just so happy somebody finally did something.
Yeah.
No more of this talking past each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad he finally had some gumption.
Did the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just took an entire book for it to happen.
Yes. And they finally were reconciled. It was good. They lived happily ever after.
Yes, they did.
And probably more happily for having grown up a little bit before they got married, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Stability is sexy. I will tell you that. I will tell you that. He looks good now, but is he stable?
Just wait till he has a job.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or a therapist. Maybe both.
Oh, man. Well, I think we have, if not talked it to death, close enough for this one. As always, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of what there is to talk about with this wonderful novel, but we can save that for next time. We will probably have to do another Jane Austen at some point because it turns out Lutheran ladies like Jane Austen.
You know what?
Who knew?
You know what? That connected a lot of dots for me, actually, reading this book. And college, it just life throughout college and even high school, it just made a whole lot more sense to me.
Yep.
I was like, that's why people are the way they are.
Mm-hmm. So, but that will not be this next time. I thought about switching genres again, because we haven't done any nonfiction in a while, which we should.
Yeah.
But then
the last time was the one right before this was nonfiction.
was it? What did we read? It's all running together now.
Cross, wasn't
Oh,
it?
word.
So
Okay,
many
yeah.
good. Oh, Spirituality of the Cross. You're right. That was nonfiction.
Last week was like so long ago.
Okay.
No,
You know what, then? We don't have to feel bad about going with another novel.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely don't.
Because it's wintertime and it's good for cozy snuggling
guilt is
on the
no
couch
straw,
with a
Bill.
cup of tea or coffee and reading novels. And so we're going to do that again. And because it's January and it's been a crazy month and I'm looking for easy answers to life's persistent questions right now, I think we are going to dial it back a couple of weeks to our wonderful conversation with Katie Schuermann. During which conversation, she recommended a book that none of us had read, but she said it was amazing. And I tend to believe people like Katie on things like that. So we are going to take the easy way out and read the book she recommended. Do y'all remember what it was?
Yep.
You have it, Brie.
I do have it, not on my person at the moment, but it's entitled, wait, is it The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim?
It is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. This is a book that I've not read, but I have seen the movie, which is excellent. If your kids don't fall asleep during it, they will at least be edified by it. No, it's one of those films that there's really nothing objectionable in it that I can think of. I'll have to rewatch it, but very good.
Watch it first.
It's a good movie. But before you watch the movie, you got to read the book.
Yeah,
Before I watch the movie again, I'm going to read the book. And it looks really amazing. It's about 4 strangers who all chip in on renting an Italian villa for a month. Oh. And they have all sorts of issues when they move in, and they have all sorts of personality conflicts. And yet by the end, each one of their lives is better for having become friends and just gotten away from dreary London for a while.
It's like the real world 1920s Europe edition.
It is. And it's set, it is set in the 1920s and alternating between a very drizzly London and a very beautiful castle in the Italian Riviera. And again, you've got these 4 very different women all getting away for different reasons to escape various problems in their lives or whatever. But they're all blessed by their encounters and getting out of their comfort zones socially. So
I'm casting us in the 4 different lady roles. Just saying.
Should we do a fan fiction version for our book club wrap up of just like playing out the story in short form?
Maybe.
All right.
That might dumpster fire, but it might also be funny.
Dibs on Rose Arbuthnot. I'm just going to say that right now.
I don't know who any of them are, so sure.
You will, though. You will.
That's right.
Am I going to read about her and be like, yes, this makes sense?
Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. No, they're just all such. I love books about well-drawn characters interacting and growing as human beings. So this is one of those. And we'll finish up our book club read toward the end of March. So it'll be a perfect spring book. You can all imagine spending April in the Italian Riviera, and we'll go from there.
Sweet.
I'm so excited. And for those of you out there who are now furiously looking up how to get this book, well, we did the legwork for you before we started recording. So it's on Audible in 5 different forms?
Yeah.
It's on Hoopla. If you're on Hoopla for free books, there's several ebooks and there's one audiobook on Hoopla. I did not find it on my Libby. That doesn't mean it isn't on your Libby. And of course, you can buy it from your local bookstore. More than likely, it's available. Bookshop.org is a great place to buy your books. Lots of places to get this book. I'm really looking forward to this as well. It's going to be great. So The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. And our book club happens in our Facebook group. Rachel will have the event posted shortly before the actual discussion will happen. These discussions happen asynchronously, which means that the questions are posted and you can answer them whenever your heart desires. You can also go back to all of our previous book clubs.
Oh, yeah.
And read through the discussion and even comment, because those comments show up for everybody who participated.
Yeah,
so
we put a start date and an end date on it, but that's mostly for me. Y'all are welcome to. It's like any other party. The party's not over over till everyone's left.
All you have to do is RSVP going to that book club event when it shows up on Facebook, and you will be a part of the book club. Super duper easy.
And lurkers are always welcome. If you want to just come and hang out and read what all our smarty pants lady readers have to say for a few times before you chime in yourself, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-mm.
I do want to
true.
apologize. I had a major technical difficulty during the last book club where I was staying with my parents and their internet went out for the entire day of the last day of book club. So that party went a little later than I had anticipated to start with, but thank you for your patience. We'll get it worked out next time.
And it was still super fun.
Yeah,
So
it was.
there we go. So you can find all of our previous book club episodes at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge, or on your favorite podcasting app, or on the KFUO radio app. You can follow us on social media in the Facebook group, Lutheran Ladies Lounge, where the book club will also be. You can also follow us on Instagram at Lutheran Ladies Lounge. We post some fun content there as well. And new, you can also sign up for our e-newsletter. We have a new e-newsletter. So if you go to the show notes for this episode and scroll down a little bit, there's the link that you can sign up on MailChimp for our e-newsletter. We've only had one go out, so you haven't missed that much. We'll have another e-newsletter go out in February. You can find all kinds of content, especially if you're not on social media. You sign up for that e-newsletter, and then you won't miss out on any of the fun podcasting content.
That was one of our reasons for starting the e-newsletter, is because we know that some people, including myself, are spending less time on social media, and we want to have a way for everybody to be connected. So if you are one of those who is spending less time on social media, especially don't miss out on the e-newsletter.
And along with the e-newsletter, you can also email us if you have any comments or suggestions, especially if you're not on social media and you would like to still get in contact with us. You can email us at lutheranladies@kfuo.org, and that will go to all four of us, so you have direct contact with the Lutheran Ladies Lounge ladies. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Mary Musgrove's Mother of the Year trophy.
Very, very dusty.
And crusty.
And I'm going to be Anne Elliot when I grow up.
I think you are Anne Elliot now.
Right now.
I'm trying. Yeah. Trying so hard.
Anne Elliot when she grows up.
Yeah, Anne Elliot. Whatever. Anne Elliot wants to be Rachel Baumberger when she grows up.
Well,
How about that?
The feeling is mutual, darling.
KFUO Radio and the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast are underwritten in part by Ad Crucem. Visit them online at adcrucem.com. Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.
I love dogs. Get out of here, Maggie.
Can we pause for a minute while I take the dog upstairs?
Yes.
Okay.
Do it.
I'm totally putting that dog barking in, though.
I love it. I love dogs. Dogs are the best.
I was just about to say, we need a studio dog, but that is totally not realistic.
That is totally realistic and preferred.
We could have like a studio kitty, though.
You should bring your cats.
Cats
We're
are
highly
loud.
allergic.
Oh, she's highly allergic,
That
bro.
will make
Don't do
for
it.
Not the greatest recordings.
Our cats are very loud when they
Please
want
pause.
things,
I need to blow my nose again. I'm not crying. It's just the allergies.
I promise.
It's allergies.
Time in.
Okay.
I'm in.
So you can find all of our previous Book Club.
Look.
Wait, this is airing this week. Never
Yes.
mind.
We're caught
Sorry.
up.
Okay.
It's almost real time.
Almost real time.
It's almost a live episode.
Almost.
Good thing it's not.
Right? I'm going to cut that part out.